In this video, I'm going to go through the top 3 biggest mistakes that beginners make when learning Spanish. If you don't know me, my name is Hamid. I'm 15 years old and I started learning Spanish when I was around 13 years old. So here's how my Spanish was before.
Hola, estoy comiendo comida. Voy a mejorar mi español.
Y ahora puedo hablar con fluidez, puedo tener conversaciones y mi español ha mejorado mucho. Y en este video voy a hablar de 3 errores que los principiantes hacen cuando están aprendiendo español. Yo aprendí el español de... Oh yeah, I forgot, I'm supposed to be... I learned Spanish in about 120 hours of studying. And so the way it worked was, essentially in the summer of 2022, I spent my time before then discovering many different methods of learning Spanish and how to get fluent in Spanish. And so I discovered essentially 2 exercises which I hyper-fixated on during that summer, along with other methods which I tried but they weren't very effective. But these 2 exercises, I hyper-fixated on them, and after doing them during the summer, I went on a call on this app called Hello Talk, which is like a language exchange app. And by the end of the call, it had been an hour, and I was able to have an hour-long conversation with the Spanish speaker. And it was like, I was mind blown. I was like, just that? And because in total, it was 120 hours of studying, which is pretty much 18 minutes a day for 1 year. It's 2 weeks of a full work day. Like, that's how long it took me. And so, coming from someone who got fluent at 13 years old and now I'm 15 years old, now looking back at that time, I had made these methods into actual methods. And now I'm a Spanish teacher and I'm coaching people in Spanish. And here are the 3 biggest mistakes that I see people make all of the time, okay? The first mistake that I see so many people make is using Duolingo and or any other basic method of learning. So reading, using books like the Spanish learning grammar books, school, like all Quizlet, Anki School, all of these different methods that I see everyone use. These are all trash. These are all garbage. And I'm gonna explain why. When I first started learning Spanish, this guy in my class had started using Duolingo and he started seeing very minimal progress. And so from that, I was like, all right, I want to start being the best, because he made it a trend to learn Spanish. So me wanting to be the best at everything and being jealous of him, of course, I did a ton of research on different language apps, and I did Duolingo for a few weeks as well. And I saw extremely minimal progress, like extremely minute, like literally did not even help me. And I did it for a few weeks. Whereas I found another app which was called Language Transfer, which essentially explains Spanish grammar by explaining why certain things happen in Spanish instead of just telling you what it is, right? And in a few weeks of that, I was able to like start creating sentences in Spanish. And the reason why is because most of these regular methods of learning, be it Duolingo, be it school, being Anki, being memorization, being any of these textbooks, none of them actually tell you why certain things happen in Spanish. Spanish grammar is what and where. It is what the words are and where they are placed. That's a sentence is pretty much that. The words and then where those words are placed. But what people miss out on is why those things happen. Why do we place this here and why is this word like this? Why did we get como from comer? How did we get tengo from tener? They don't explain why these things happen in grammar, and because they don't, things don't make as much sense. And when it doesn't make sense, people are left for memorization. And that goes into my second point. Thinking that memorization is how to learn Spanish. And in school, this is what we did. We would study Anki, and we like when we had a vocabulary list we wanted to learn, we would use like Quizlet and Note, and like when we had conjugation methods to learn, we would use memorization essentially. Problem with memorization is that they tell you the what and the where, but they don't tell you the why. Why certain words are like how they are. And the thing is, and this is the real trick, when you know why something happens, it makes more sense. And when it makes more sense, when it clicks, you get the aha, then you remember it more. And then when you remember it, you're able to use it. People talk about how they're visual learners or they're contextual learner. Like people talk about how they learn in a different way. It's just no, you don't learn it in a different way. Everyone learns in the same way. But the reason why you say you're a visual learner is because when something is visually displayed for you and explained for you, it makes more sense. And when it makes more sense, you remember it better. You learn it better when it makes more sense. The problem with Duolingo and Babbel and Memrise, the app Memrise, is that it's about memorization. It's not about understanding the concepts. It is not about why certain things happen in Spanish. It is about what happens in Spanish and where those words are placed in Spanish. But they do not discuss why those things happen. And when it makes no sense, you are left to memorize it and you're doomed. And so when learning grammar in Spanish, or when learning even vocabulary in Spanish, we do want to do repetition, but we want it to be effective repetition. You want it to make sense, because when it makes sense, you'll remember it better. And that is a problem with both Duolingo and memorization. The whole regular sphere matrix, if you want to call it, I don't want to be like cringe or anything, but the whole regular method of learning Spanish is all about memorization. Duolingo, Babbel, memorize, textbooks, Anki, Quizlet, all those things. That entire space is all BS. I see most of beginners, they fall for that. However, that is not actually the biggest mistake when learning Spanish, and one of the biggest mistakes I see. The number one mistake in learning Spanish is believing that it is impossible to get fluent in Spanish quickly. Let me tell you a story actually, okay? In Sweden, for PE, you have to be able to swim 200 meters, and that you have to be able to do it on your back and on your stomach. And in 6th grade, that's when they start teaching you that. And the way it works is you either get an A or an F. You either do the 200 meters or you don't, and you either get an A or an F. And so by this time, actually in 6th grade, I was an absolute geek. I had a crazy high merit. Like in Sweden, we have, instead of GPA or whatever it's called in America, we have merit. But anyway, I had essentially like 95% out of 100 in terms of like overall grade. And so this was very important for me. And the issue was I didn't know how to swim. I was able to swim a few meters, like 5 meters, and then I got tired and I wasn't able to swim. And this test was coming up. And so I was super nervous because I didn't know what to do. And so during this time, me and my dad consistently went to swim together so that he could teach me how to swim. And I made kind of good progress. I made it to like 20 meters, 25 meters, but I just got tired and I wasn't able to actually achieve the 200 meters. I got tired after 30 meters. And so luckily our PE teacher gave us 3 extra lessons, like 3 extra chances to prove to her that we could swim those 200 meters. During that time, we had different coaches teaching us how to swim. And I was stuck on that 25 to 30 meter range. And it was a mental block for me. It was like a plateau. I could not get past that 25 to 30 meter range. I just got tired after that point. And so the last lesson rolls around, the last time that we are going to swim. And my last chance to prove to her that I can swim the 200 meters. And by the way, if I don't do it, I'm gonna get an F, and I'm a geek, so this matters a lot for me. And so I go into another pool and I'm practicing before the test, and suddenly I get to 80 meters, and that was because I thought of a new strategy I could use, and I truly believed in this strategy because before I even was going to the pool, I was watching videos on what strategy to use. And so I thought about this strategy of how I'm going to swim these meters, and I realized that I could do 2 on my breast and then go 1 on my back, and then 2 on my breast and 1 on my back, and then one last one on my back. Because swimming on my back wasn't a problem. I could swim on my back just fine. The problem was swimming on my breast, because on my chest I got extremely tired when I was swimming regular on my chest. And we weren't allowed to swim a lot on our back. So the strategy was I would go 2 on my stomach, so 2 laps on my stomach, and we had to do 8 laps total. Then 1 on my back, then 2 on my stomach, and then 1 on my back. And then finally I could do 1 on my back because we got to do 3 times on our back. And first I tested out and I got 80 meters, and then it was the last chance. It was time to do the 200 meters, and I actually believe that I could do it. Before, literally just before, weeks before, I could not get past that 25 meter to 30 meter plateau. And guess what? I got in the pool and boom, I did the 200 meters. Literally, for the first time in my entire life, I swam 200 meters without holding anything. I actually did the 200 meters, and it was literally that test that I was supposed to do it. And I was super happy, and I got a really good grade after that. I got an A obviously in the swimming thing because it's either an A or an F. And so what this proved to me was that manifestation really does play a big role. What you believe has such a big role on what happens, the result that you get. When I was learning Spanish, what really convinced me that I was able to get fluent in that one summer was this YouTuber named Language Lords, where he got fluent in 44 days. Then I saw another YouTuber, he got fluent in 20 days. And there was kind of this trend of getting fluent in a month or something. And so my whole thing was, if these people can do it, why can't I? Same thing with the swimming, right? It was a mental block of course, I can't do it because I didn't know how to swim. But it all came down to sort of breaking that belief and thinking that, no, they can do it, so I can also do it. But it all came to breaking that belief and thinking, yeah, but if they can do it, I can also do it. And then it's about exercising that idea by thinking about how you're going to actually achieve it. Because when you put this mental block of thinking okay, I'm not going to be able to do it. There's no such thing as getting fluent in Spanish in 30 days. It's impossible. When you think that it's impossible, your brain stops thinking. It stops thinking about a strategy. It stops thinking about how to actually achieve that goal. When you think that getting rich, for example, is luck, you're not going to be looking for opportunities, are you? Right? If I just gave up and thought, no, I'm not going to be able to do the 200 meters, my brain would have stopped and I wouldn't have thought about that strategy and I wouldn't have then achieved that goal. When you at least have an open mind to believe that something is possible, you discover strategies of how to achieve it and then you achieve it. I first wasn't that convinced about getting fluent in it that quickly. I didn't think I would be able to do it. But once I saw these other people doing it, I started thinking about how I could do it myself. It started becoming something that I was like, okay, if I do this method and do this method, I would be able to get fluent. And so not only did that make me more confident, but once I executed on it, it worked. And that's how I got fluent. Point being, if you simply give up and don't believe that it's possible, that you're gonna get fluent in that period of time, you're right, you're not. Because you've already killed yourself. You've already stunted your progress. You're not gonna make any progress. It's about having an open mind and exercising the idea that it's possible. And that is where you, for example, discover these strategies, which I talked about in these videos. The 2 exercises I did, I call them transcript training and narrative, elaborate, contemplate. I would have never ever made these methods if I never even exercised the idea that it's possible to get fluent quickly. That quickly, at least 20 days, 30 days, 44 days. And so, me, myself, I got fluent in 120 days of studying, and that was conversationally fluent. Now I've put in a total of 200 hours of studying, which, by the way, that is a few months in terms of studying. If you did 1 hour a day, that is, how many months is that? That's 6 months of studying for 1 hour a day. And natives have told me that I sound like natives. Recently, in Sweden, if you don't know, we have something called gymnasium, which is this high school. And we check out different high schools. And there is one Spanish teacher at this very high status, high-end high school. And he's Swedish, but he went to Chile to study Spanish. And he'd learned Spanish on his own, kind of like how I did, but not in the same method, of course. I didn't ask him about that. I was just able to walk in, have the conversation, and people around us were looking damn, kind of impressed. And also I kind of explained to him how I learned Spanish, and he was also pretty impressed because I didn't travel to a Spanish speaking country or anything like that, which is what he did, at least. And to think that all that came from just believing that I could is just why wouldn't you, at least? Why wouldn't you exercise the idea that something that you think might be impossible to achieve can be possible to achieve? Because personally, I've had several instances that this has worked out. And I've told you about Spanish and then also swimming. There are literally so many examples I could give you. And so those are the top 3 biggest mistakes that beginners make when they're learning Spanish. If you want to get fluent in Spanish the way I got fluent and achieve the similar results as me, then I have a Spanish coaching program. You can check the description, and that is where you can add me on Discord and we can discuss. And I hope this video helped you, bro, and stay humble.